Hi. So I am starting over. I was recording your vocabulary diamond and I got a phone call, and then the school alarm started going off and all manner of craziness. So I'm starting over. The story that we're reading this week is a science fiction story, and that means that it takes place in the future. Now, one of the interesting things about this story is that it's written by a man who was not a children's author. He was a very famous science fiction author. And he wrote this story at the time that he wrote it. There was no such thing as home computers. Computers were used by companies to store data and information, and they were huge. So a computer for a company might be as big as our classroom. The information would be stored and sorted on these giant punch cards. So somehow Isaac Asimov was able to predict that computers would get smaller and smaller, and that eventually we would have computers in our homes. And he predicted this years before that was even a possibility. And so when he wrote this story, this seems like kind of a normal story to us nowadays, but back then it was a super crazy science fiction story. So somehow Isaac Asimov was able to predict that we would have home computers. And um, what's interesting is there's also like a certain amount of prediction about email and about how people would communicate by computers. Um, so it's interesting to me. He was an author. A lot of his adult books also had lots of really good predictions. And I think one of the reasons why he was able to predict the future and write about it is because he was very interested in the future. So he kept track of scientific developments, he kept track of technological developments, he kept track of pop culture, and he really had his finger on the pulse. He kind of knew the direction the world was going to be going in. And so he would write about it in his stories. And some of his adult stories are very interesting. I am not aware of any other children's stories that he wrote other than this story that we're going to be reading. He was mainly an adult writer, and wrote some fairly famous science fiction literature for adults. So it's kind of interesting seeing his children's story. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you. And I already started before when the alarm and my phone started ringing, and there were all kinds of problems, weird problems. So I started out with the first word, and it was calculated. And calculated is a verb and an adjective, and it means that something is made known or ascertained by math. Math is used to solve a problem. So ascertained means to understand or to learn, and mathematically means you've used math to do it. My synonym was figured, and so I'm going to just draw a calculator. I think I'm going to. I guess I need to do a button here and a little screen. And then we need a little keyboard. So our next word is scanner. So a scanner is something that's attached to your computer. And what a scanner does is it takes a picture of a document. So what's really interesting to me is that Isaac Asimov was clearly, their scanners had been invented, but he was able to see that they would in a way that they would be used. So nowadays, if I have a scanner attached to my computer, what it does is I can put photos on the scanner, like old photos, pictures of my grandmother, or I can put maybe a worksheet that I want you guys to have on a scanner. It will take a picture of whatever's on the scanner and it will feed it into my computer, and then I can use it. Like I could email the picture to you, or I could email the worksheet to you. Um, there's another kind of scanner, which I think he's meaning in this story, and that is an optical scanner, right? And nowadays we have scanners that can do facial recognition. An optical scanner would like measure your eye and would be able to tell if it was you based on your eye. So in the story, he's going to be talking about a scanner, and we know scanners being a little differently than the story is going to know scanners. So it is a noun, and it is an optical reader. So it reads pictures. You can also, nowadays when they take your fingerprints, in the old days, they would stick your finger in ink and you would press it down and you would do an actual stamp of your fingerprint. Nowadays, when you go to get your fingerprints done, they put you on a scanner and it scans your fingerprints. And so you don't get ink all over your hands. When you're a teacher, you have to get your fingerprinted on a fairly regular basis. And a lot of parents at our school have to get fingerprinted too, to be able to help out at the school. So there is no real synonym for scanner. A scanner is a scanner and there's not really another word for it. So if you have a scanner that scans pictures, it kind of looks like this. It's flat. It has a lid that comes up and you put your photo. It's almost like a copier. You put your photo on there. It has like a bunch of buttons, maybe an on-off switch. And it's got a cord that goes to your computer or to your printer. Mine goes to my printer. My printer looks kind of like this. My printer has a whole bunch of cartridges in it. All right. Our third word is dispute. That's a noun. And it can also be a verb. And it means to engage in an argument or debate. I spelled argument wrong. I just need an M there. And squabble was my synonym that I got. And so if you're disputing with somebody, you're having an argument, like you might be saying, I hate you. And this person might be saying, I hate you more. And somebody else might be saying, calm down. All right, our next word is centuries. Centuries, it's a noun. And it is a period of 100 years. And epoch is the synonym for that. So if we were to have a timeline, I have a timeline, a California timeline on the wall, and it shows, it starts out with, it looks like it starts out in the mid 1800s. So you might start out with 1800, and then you go to 1900, and then you go to 2000, and then you go to 2100, right? So if you're keeping track on a timeline, that's what centuries look like. Every 100 years, there's a century. Okay, we're going to flip. Our next word is superior. And superior means above average in excellence. And it's an adjective. The synonym I got was remarkable. So if something's superior, it kind of means that it's better than everything else. One of the things that is superior in my mind is there's different kinds of clay that you can buy, and some kinds of clay are superior to others. So for example, if I'm going to make something that someone is going to drink out of, I would want to use a really fine clay called porcelain. And it's what people use to make really fine teacups. So you might go to the store and you might buy a bag. This is a bag. Of porcelain. So porcelain is a superior clay for making things that you're going to drink out of, or things that, like a vase, a really fine vase. If you're going to make a big, huge sculpture, let's say that you're making a sculpture, let's say that you're making a giant sculpture of somebody's head. And you're making that out of clay. And it's going to have like a baseball cap that the person's wearing. So let's say that you're making a sculpture. Then you're going to want to use a superior clay for sculpture. If you use porcelain for your sculpture, porcelain cracks really easily and it doesn't support itself. It's like chewing gum. So you're going to want to use a clay that has some body to it, that can stand up, that's not going to be squishy or pull apart. And that kind of, there's a kind of clay called sculpture mix. So that would be superior for making a sculpture. So I was in a class where we made giant heads. It was a really fun class. And we had to use special clay that had a lot of particles in it so that it wouldn't collapse. So definitely you wouldn't use porcelain. There is one man on the planet that does these big, huge, really involved, really wonderful sculptures, and he makes them out of porcelain. And I think he's insane because I don't know how he does it. Because porcelain just wants to crack and it wants to break down and not support itself. All right, our next word is average. Average means typical or normal. It's an adjective. And ordinary was the synonym I got. So on an average day in California, we have sunny skies, maybe a little bit of cloud cover. We have the sun. We have trees that are blooming, like an average spring day. Has pretty nice weather. Every now and again, we might have a day that's extra windy or a day that's a little bit sprinkly, but usually we have pretty consistent weather. Mechanical is our next word. Mechanical means having to do with machinery. It's an adjective. All right, and automated was my synonym that I got. So if you have a mechanical toy, like you might have a little mechanical robot. And it might have a body that's mechanical. And it might run on batteries. All right, so it just means it has to do with machinery. Our last word is progress. And it is a noun. It is a movement towards a goal. And growth is the synonym that I got. Okay, so progress, we get progress reports, right? You get a progress report. It has your name on it. It tells all the things that you've been doing in class and you get grades on it. Right? And so progress means that you're working towards a goal, right? All right. I hope this helped you. I hope you enjoy reading this story. I know from reading a bit of science fiction that science fiction isn't my thing. I'm not I'm not somebody that enjoys reading science fiction. I have tried. I've read a lot of science fiction. Sometimes people recommend science fiction books for me to read. It's not really my thing. But I would say that the few books that I've read of Isaac Asimov, I found them to be very interesting. I like how someone can be an average person and can predict and guess what's going to happen in the future before that future is even close to happening 20 years. So it's hard for me to even imagine what is going to be happening 20 years from now or 30 or 40 years from now. So science fiction is kind of interesting because that's what it involves. It involves being able to think ahead and think about how life is going to be different down the road. So I hope you enjoy reading this story, even if, and maybe you might find that you like reading science fiction when you're reading it. A lot of people really enjoy science fiction. All right. Thanks for joining me.